Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're venturing into something that touches, well, every single moment of your existence.
Consciousness.
Exactly. Consciousness. It's so fundamental, You're listening right now. Aware. Self-aware, even. Think about that. That inner feeling of you experiencing things.
It's the most intimate thing we know. And yet,
Scientifically, it's baffling, isn't it? Science is still kind of scratching its head.
it really is a profound mystery.
Okay.
We live it, we breathe it, but a solid, agreed-upon scientific explanation. Still pretty elusive.
Right.
You see these incredible advances in neuroscience mapping the brain in more and more detail.
Yeah, the stamps look amazing.
They do. And physics, of course, gives us the rules for the material world, including the brain itself. But neither field has quite managed to bridge that gap.
The gap to what?
To the subjective part, the actual feeling of being conscious, that first-person experience.
It's like trying to understand a symphony by just listing the instruments.
That's a great analogy.
You can analyze the brass, the woodwinds, how they vibrate, but it doesn't tell you about the music itself, the emotion,
Precisely.
the experience.
So what if we've been looking at it, well, maybe from the wrong angle? Today we're diving into a potentially, let's say, groundbreaking idea, Dr. Michael Pravica's theory.
Hyperdimensional consciousness.
Yes. The big question is consciousness just brain wiring, just neurons firing?
Or could it be something more? Something extending beyond our physical reality?
Maybe interacting with dimensions we can't normally see or touch.
That's the core idea we're exploring.
And our goal really is to explore this fascinating theory and what it might mean without getting totally lost in the weeds, Make it make sense.
Absolutely. Spark curiosity.
Okay, so let's start there. Why does our current understanding feel incomplete? What are the limits?
Well, like we touched on, neuroscience is fantastic at finding correlations.
Right, this part of the brain lights up when I feel happy. Exactly. We can see which bits are active when you're, say, remembering something or solving a math problem.
But correlation isn't causation. Every scientist says that.
It's fundamental. Knowing which neurons fire doesn't explain the feeling itself, that internal quality of happiness.
It's like knowing the light switch turns on the bulb, but not really understanding electricity.
That's another good way to put it. And physics. It gives us the laws for the physical universe, the brain included.
Okay.
But those laws, as we understand them now, don't inherently explain how subjective awareness just pops into existence. There's this divide.
Between the objective, measurable stuff science likes and our inner world, our first-person reality.
That's the hard problem, as some call it.
It feels like trying to understand, a live football game by only looking at the stadium blueprints.
Right. You learn about the structure, the seats, the steel.
But nothing about the game, the excitement, the strategy, the human drama unfolding inside.
You miss the whole point, really.
Yeah. Which is where Dr. Michael Pravica comes in. His theory offers this really intriguing alternative. Tell us about it, this hyperdimensional idea. What's the core?
Okay, so what's really interesting is that Pravica approaches this not as a neuroscientist primarily or a philosopher, but as a physicist.
A physicist. Okay, different angle.
Exactly. His central idea is that consciousness might not be stuck just within our usual 3 spatial dimensions plus time.
Our everyday reality.
Right. Instead, he suggests consciousness could be fundamentally linked to higher dimensions beyond our normal perception.
Higher dimensions. Now, okay, when people hear that, minds might jump straight to, like, sci-fi movies, right? Interstellar travel, wormholes.
Understandable.
Yeah.
But it's important to clarify, this isn't just pulled out of thin air. The idea of higher dimensions actually has, well, pretty solid roots in theoretical physics.
Really? Like what?
Things like string theory, M theory, certain interpretations of quantum mechanics. These frameworks mathematically describe the possibility of more dimensions, sometimes 10, 11, maybe even more.
Wow, okay, so these are serious theories physicists use.
They are. They're sophisticated attempts to unify our understanding of nature's fundamental forces. Pravica takes these concepts, which are theoretical but mathematically grounded, and applies them to this ancient mystery of consciousness.
Okay, so the dimensions might exist, at least, on paper in these theories, but how does Pravica see our consciousness connecting with them? What's the link?
He theorizes that our conscious awareness might function as a kind of interface, or maybe a doorway.
An interface between our 3D world and these other dimensions?
Sort of. Think of your awareness maybe like an antenna.
Yeah.
Capable of picking up signals from a much broader, more complex reality than just the one we see and touch.
An antenna.
And he suggests that our everyday mental stuff, our thoughts, dreams, intuitions, those gut feelings we can't always explain,
Yeah.
might not be solely generated by brain activity. They could be perhaps echoes, reflections,
Echoes from where?
from activity or information within these higher dimensional realms, sort of filtering down into our 3D consciousness.
Whoa. Okay, that is a shift. So that random idea that pops into my head out of nowhere, or a dream that feels incredibly intensely real.
Could those be glimpses, fleeting moments where we're interacting with or receiving something from these other levels? That's the fascinating implication.
It changes how you think about the mind entirely.
It does. If you follow this line of thought, it suggests consciousness might be way more fundamental to the universe than our current science usually assumes.
Not just something that bubbles up from complex brains like ours.
Exactly. It could be woven into the very fabric of reality itself, existing and interacting across multiple dimensions.
All right, let's try and wrap our heads around these higher dimensions a bit more, because living in 3D space plus time, it feels pretty abstract.
It definitely does. It's hard to visualize.
Can you give us a way to think about it?
Sure. We're all good with the first three, right? Length, width, height. They define the space around us.
Yep, got it.
And the fourth is usually seen as time.
Mm-hmm.
It gives our 3D world duration sequence. Now, when physicists talk about higher dimensions, they're talking about mathematical spaces beyond these four. And yes, they're hard to picture directly.
So what do they look like or not look like?
Often they're described as being compactified or coiled up at incredibly tiny scales, far smaller than anything we can directly observe.
Compactified. Coiled up. Like, if you saw a really thin thread from far away, it looks like just a line, one dimension. But if you got really close, you'd see it actually has a little circle around it, a circumference, a second dimension that was sort of rolled up tiny.
That's a classic and very helpful analogy, yes.
Yeah.
Imagine that thread is more like a tiny, tiny garden hose.
Okay.
From far off, just a line, one dimension. Get closer, you see the circular dimension, the circumference. It was essentially rolled up or hidden from view at a distance.
So these extra dimensions in the theories could be like that, curled up so tight we just don't experience them normally.
That's the idea. They're there, mathematically at least, but hidden from our everyday perception because they're so incredibly small or folded in on themselves.
Okay, but if they're so hidden, so tightly coiled, how could our consciousness possibly interact with them? What's the proposed mechanism?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's what makes Pravica's theory so, well, provocative.
So how does he suggest it works?
His idea of consciousness acting as an interface. That suggests a possible way. Perhaps our brains, which are unbelievably complex
Right.
and have all sorts of quantum stuff happening inside them constantly. Maybe they're somehow uniquely tuned,
Yeah.
equipped to interact with these folded dimensions.
So like the brain is a conduit, a way for information or influence to pass back and forth.
Potentially. A bridge between our familiar reality and these other hidden realms. It's speculative, of course, but it opens a door.
It really makes you reconsider some of those, more mysterious human experiences.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier maybe things like dreams could be viewed differently through this lens. Could those really vivid, sometimes bizarre dreams be moments where our consciousness is somehow experiencing these other dimensions?
It's a possibility the theory allows for.
What about déjà vu? That uncanny feeling you've lived a moment exactly like this before, even though you know you haven't? Or those really profound, life-changing spiritual awakenings some people report. Could these be brief touches? Moments where our awareness brushes up against something more?
These are precisely the kinds of phenomena that Pravica's theory invites us to re-examine.
Instead of just writing them off.
Exactly. Instead of dismissing them purely as, say, brain glitches or psychological quirks, which they might be, in some cases, this hyperdimensional model offers another way to think about them.
A different framework.
Right. It suggests maybe they aren't just random neurological noise. Maybe they are glimpses, as you said, into a deeper, more interconnected reality.
So not magic, not madness.
But potentially more reality than we've been trained to perceive, as the original outline put it. It gives weight to our intuition, our subjective world. Suggests they might hold real clues.
It's a perspective that definitely opens up possibilities. But let's hit the big one, evidence.
Ah, yes. The evidence question.
As we said, there's no consciousness scanner for your brain, let alone one that detects other dimensions.
Right.
We don't have a telescope pointing at dimension 6. So
Yeah.
what evidence is there? if any, for this hyperdimensional view?
And you're absolutely right to ask. There isn't direct, measurable scientific proof in the way we usually mean it in science.
Okay. So no smoking gun.
No instrument readout that says hyperdimensional interaction detected. Oh, yeah, anyway, Pravica's theory right now is mainly a conceptual framework.
An interpretation.
An interpretation, yes. A way of looking at the problem that takes ideas from theoretical physics and offers a potential explanation for some of these long-standing puzzles about consciousness.
So if we don't have that traditional proof, why should we even pay attention to a theory like this? What's the value?
Well, I think the value lies in how it reframes the whole question. It offers a genuinely novel way to think about consciousness and its place in the cosmos.
It opens up different questions.
Exactly. Questions that are hard, maybe impossible to even ask if you stick strictly to purely biological or brain-based models.
And it does offer a potential slot for all those subjective experiences people report.
Right, those gut feelings, that sense of knowing something's about to happen, the really vivid dreams, things that don't fit neatly into current boxes.
They might not be proof on their own.
No, they're not scientific proof. But this theory provides a framework that doesn't just ignore them or call them anomalies. It considers them as possibly meaningful, potential interactions with a bigger reality.
It feels a bit like we're bumping up against the limits of our current scientific tools when it comes to consciousness.
That's a good way to put it.
And maybe a radical new perspective like this, even if it's speculative now, is what's needed to eventually break through.
It could be.
It reminds me of light, you know? For ages, we thought it was just a wave. Then, oops, it also acts like a particle.
The wave-particle duality, yeah.
Our understanding had to get bigger, more complex to fit the reality. Could consciousness be like that? Having aspects that are just invisible to our current methods.
That's a really insightful analogy.
Yeah.
Just as light revealed a deeper, more nuanced reality, maybe our picture of consciousness is also incomplete.
Missing pieces.
Missing pieces.
Mm.
Maybe it does have aspects that go beyond what we can currently measure or observe directly. And a hyperdimensional framework, at least, gives us a way to think about what those aspects might be, how they might connect back to us.
Okay, so as we start to bring this deep dive toward a close, what are the main what-if questions that Pravica's theory leaves us with? The big takeaways.
I think fundamentally it challenges our basic assumptions about who and what we are.
Like what?
Well, what if our experience of being alive, being aware, is much bigger than just the electrochemical buzz inside our skulls?
More expansive.
Way more expansive. What if our thoughts, our intentions, what if they aren't just internal brain states, but a form of interaction with a larger reality?
Maybe even, as we joked earlier, a form of dimensional travel.
Perhaps in some subtle sense. And what if that ancient idea of the soul?
Yeah. Always debated in religion, philosophy.
What if it's not just a spiritual concept, but points towards something real? A scientific frontier we could potentially explore through this kind of hyperdimensional lens.
It really makes you reflect on your own life, those quieter moments, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, have you ever had a dream that felt so incredibly real it just stayed with you all day?
Many people have.
Or felt a sudden, powerful connection to someone far away? Or just a wave of emotion seemingly out of the blue? Could those everyday things, the intuitions we often dismiss, actually be subtle hints, little connections to these other dimensions Pravica talks about?
That's really the invitation of this theory, I think, to consider that your reality might be far richer, far more interconnected than our current scientific models fully capture yet.
So those deep intuitions, vivid dreams, profound feelings, love, grief, even just deep silence.
Maybe they aren't just isolated blips inside your individual mind. Maybe they're moments where you are somehow, subtly but genuinely, touching a deeper, more expansive reality.
So wrapping up this exploration of Dr. Pravica's hyperdimensional theory, it's clear we don't have all the answers, not by a long shot.
Definitely not.
But it offers a really compelling, thought-provoking alternative to seeing ourselves as just, biological machines.
It pushes the boundaries of how we think about ourselves in the universe.
It encourages us to consider that maybe, just maybe, you are more than you seem.
Maybe infinitely more.
Thank you for taking this journey with us on the deep dive. Something to ponder, perhaps, about your own experience of the world.